Last week, the big talking point was about how Call of Duty could wind up making Sony more money than it does Xbox. Well, we got some official figures out from Microsoft about how well Call of Duty Black Ops 6 is doing. And let's just say this, it is a smash success for Xbox and Microsoft. So, long story short on this one, Call of Duty Black Ops 6 is the biggest Call of Duty launch ever. It sets new single-day Game Pass sub record. That is from Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella, and he touts Call of Duty's success after release. Now, I actually went through and listened to this earnings call, or I should say read, because they do a full transcript of it, and there's a lot of interesting tidbits in there beyond how well Call of Duty did. But Call of Duty is definitely the highlight. If we go into some of the slides, though, let's dive a little bit deeper into how they have been doing. So long story short, if you look at the bottom of this PowerPoint slide, you can see that Xbox content and services revenue increased 61%, driven by 53 points of net impact from the Activision acquisition. That is a huge amount, considering the fact that you're seeing, what is that, 8% growth without Activision's help. That is huge. That is quite substantial. And as far as I know, we're not seeing the net impact of the Game Pass subscriptions going up. Let's go through some of these Satya Nadella quotes from the actual earnings call real quick. Now on the gaming, they said, 1 year since we closed our acquisition of Activision Blizzard King, we are focused on building a business position for long-term growth, driven by higher margin content and services. You already see this transformation in our results as we diversify the ways that gamers access our content. We set new records for monthly active users in the quarter as more players than ever play our games across devices and on the Xbox platform. Game Pass also set a new Q1 record for total revenue and average revenue per subscriber. And as we look ahead, our IP across our studios has never been stronger. Look, we all can and should give Microsoft a hard time when Satya Nadella is getting these massive bonuses and, you know, they've had a rough year and they went through the layoffs and everything. But they have always said they do not care where you play these games. So when I see something like, oh, this could end up making Sony more money, by what how does that make any sense? How does that make any sense? Microsoft will make 70% of every purchase of that game off of your platform. They're not worried about that 30% going to somebody else. They're just making a ton of money by releasing their games as many places as possible. They've made it very clear that they intend to do that more often into the future. So it's something that we have to get used to, and seeing people online still hold on to the idea that the console is the future, it's just, I just feel like you're in a different reality, if I'm being totally honest. Because the fact of the matter is people just want access to their games, and Call of Duty is proving that, hey, you put a good game out there that's available a lot of places, guess what? You're going to sell a lot of copies of that game. Do I think they're giving up on hardware, Microsoft? No. They've made that clear as day that they are not giving up on hardware. They are still going to have some tentpole exclusives, but they are also going to continue releasing games like Call of Duty multi-platform. The big bet paid off, at least so far. Let's hear what else they have to say. Last week's launch of Black Ops 6 was the biggest Call of Duty release ever, setting a record for day one players as well as Game Pass subscriber adds on launch day. And unit sales on PlayStation and Steam were also up over 60% year over year. Call of Duty is the cash cow. I recognize that the last Call of Duty wasn't the best Call of Duty that has ever been released, but Raven Software, I have been playing a ton of Black Ops 6, and I'm like, this is really fun. Like, I know I'm a filthy casual. I know I'm not the best player on planet Earth. I got my first play of the game yesterday, or today actually. I was so happy, and it's a really good game. And the last one, the buzz was, this one's probably a miss. This one, the buzz is, you should probably check out this Call of Duty. And it's on Game Pass. It's doing everything that Microsoft hoped it would do. So it's a huge success for them, obviously. This speaks to our strategy of meeting gamers where they are by enabling them to play more games across more screens they spend their time on. And that is a metric that a lot of people might not realize. People don't want to buy a new thing to play a thing. So if they have a PlayStation, they just want to be able to access the thing. We know that gamers don't really care about microtransactions because they still exist. You'll buy a $90 mount in World of Warcraft, but you're worried about buying a $70 game on your PlayStation 5. I mean, I don't think so. I realize that's the PC ecosystem versus the console ecosystem. But the fact of the matter is, people didn't care about microtransactions. They don't care about paying $70 for a game on PlayStation. And Microsoft doesn't care about getting 70% of that revenue from the consumers buying the game there. I also don't care if you subscribe or not, but it would be great if you did. No, I do. I care a little bit. It would be nice because like 60% of people aren't subscribed. So hit that subscribe button, hit that bell if you're not already. That was one of my worst ones. Anyway, let's keep going. In closing, we are rapidly innovating to expand our opportunity across our commercial and consumer businesses. In 3 weeks' time, we will hold our Ignite conference, and I look forward to sharing more about how we are helping every business function use AI to drive growth in this new area. We're going to talk about that in just a second, but long story short, Xbox has a lot of cool stuff coming. They have Avowed coming next year. I did the preview on that for IGN. I had a good time. I did the preview for Stalker 2. Stalker 2, you remember, I was wishy-washy on Avowed. I played it. I'm like, okay, this game's good. I was wishy-washy on Stalker 2. I played it, and I'm like, okay, yeah, this one's good too. Ryan McCaffrey over at IGN played Indiana Jones. He's like, this is really good. And if you go look at all the previews for Indiana Jones, that game is also getting a lot of positive buzz. They're saying it's sort of like Thief and Riddick. And I'm like, well, I'm on board with that. The question I keep asking on Unlock, the Xbox show that I do over at IGN, and here is, has Xbox finally figured out that games are really important? Have they like created a window of time so that developers can really get out there and cook and make great stuff? I think they might have. I think we might be going into like a holiday season that is all about Microsoft. Where is PlayStation this holiday season? What's going on with Sony? Like, and they just lost, they just shut down the Concord studio. They lost their director who was working on Wolverine. He went over to work on Perfect Dark. Like all of this it's just, I feel like we're an upside down world where, last year we're all talking about how great Sony's doing and they're breaking records, and Microsoft finally, are they hitting their stride? Like, I don't want to get ahead of myself because I feel like I've said that so many times, but there's something in the air around Microsoft. At least that's how it seems right now to me. Now, one area, to be fair, that they are not doing well in is hardware. Let's talk about that. Now, to more personal computing, revenue was $13.2 billion, increasing 17%, with 15 points of net impact from the Activision acquisition. Results were above expectations, driven by gaming and search. And in gaming, revenue increased 43% and 44% in constant currency, with 43 points of net impact from the Activision acquisition. Results were ahead of expectations, driven by stronger than expected performance in both first and third-party content, as well as consoles. Xbox content and services revenue increased 61%, with 53 points of net impact from the Activision acquisition. Now, as we talked about, an 8% increase, if I'm reading that correctly, that is massive for Microsoft. And I'm going to promote Brad Sams here, if I remember to put it in with the little icon. He talks about why the Xbox branch not falling at a time when everybody else is having major struggles. It's actually huge. It's huge that they're not cratering. They're not seeing this massive spike down. It's positive momentum for them, believe it or not. I know it's might look like stagnation to some, but keeping even right now when everybody else is doing layoffs and having all of these struggles, it is a huge W for them. Segment gross margin dollars increased 16% and 17% in constant currency, with 12 points in net impact from the Activision acquisition. Gross margin percentage was relatively unchanged year over year. Our strong execution on margin improvement in gaming and search was offset by sales mix shift to those businesses. Operating expenses increased 49%, with 51% from the Activision acquisition. Operating income decreased 44%. So a lot of just number mumbo jumbo. But long story short, what was I thinking about here? Overall, they're doing quite well, but hardware-wise is one area where they're not doing great. So I had another slide brought up here. Content and services, big growth. Lots of growth here on slide 12 and on slide 14. They talk about how gaming revenue grew 43%. Content and services grew 61%. Hardware revenue declined 29%, which is quite high, but I think everybody's struggling with hardware sales right now. PlayStation 5 is outselling the Xbox 3-1, but they're also saying, like, we're behind our projections. We're not doing as well as we wanted. So I think it was to be expected. It is a little surprising that it is a 29% slump. And I do wonder, are they going to release that rumored handheld sooner rather than later? There was one other slide I wanted to bring up here near the end. You can sort of see the numbers here at the end here. Constant currency reconciliation. You can see content and services revenue 61, hardware 29, and search 18. So that's just a peek at how they're doing. So hardware, not so great, but the play has always been content and services. 3 years ago, when I was talking about this merger, I'm like, they don't care where you play the game. They've never cared where you play. You can play in the cloud. You can play on your PC. You can play on your console. And everyone's like, that's crazy. Now who's looking at getting in on the action? Everybody else. Everybody else is seeing we need to release our games more places. Games are coming out faster on PC from PlayStation too. It used to be 2 years. Now it's like a year and a few months. So there's that going on also. And here's a big note from the end of the presentation. And in gaming, we expect revenue to decline in the high single digits due to hardware. We expect Xbox content and services revenue growth to be relatively flat. We're excited about last week's launch of Call of Duty, where we saw the most Game Pass subscriber adds we've ever seen on a launch day. That's just the launch day numbers. So they saw the most added subscribers to Game Pass ever on a launch day for a game. So it beat out the Starfield launch day numbers. I gotta wonder if they're approaching 40 mil, because they were at like 30 something last we looked. There are two things about the launch that are different than the Call of Duty launch a year ago, where revenue was mostly recognized in the quarter of purchase. First, the game is available on Game Pass, so for players who play through Game Pass, the subscription revenue is recognized over time. Second, the game requires an online connection to play, so even for players who purchase the standard game, revenue recognition will also occur I'm covering it up. I can't see. Let's see if I can turn off my camera effect really quick. Ratably over time. So they will figure that out. If we go back to the first slide here, though, what's insane to me is just how many people bought the game on PlayStation. I'm trying to find it there. Yeah. And unit sales on PlayStation and Steam were also up over 60% year over year. And I see people online talking about this. They're like, yeah, but everybody bought it on PlayStation. Yeah, you're funding Microsoft to make more Xbox games and make more games for you. That's a win for Microsoft and Xbox. How is that like somehow people online see that as a W for Sony or something? It's like, yeah, you're going to fund more great games from Microsoft. So you'll win in the long run, but the bigger picture thing is all gamers win. That's a good thing. This isn't like the console war's over. Let it go. And it's good that Microsoft had this successful thing. Hopefully Sony gets it together, after they unfortunately closed down the Concord studio, but they've been struggling to figure out like whatever they're doing over there. I think they're going to have a big W with Wolverine. Who knows what's going to come next year? They do have a Game of the Year contender with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and then Metaphor ReFantazio, which was largely marketed as an Xbox game, is also popping off as a coveted game. It has been a really strong year for releases, even though there were fewer exclusives for PlayStation, you know, because a lot like Silent Hill 2 came out on PC. There was there were just games that came out on PlayStation that came out on other platforms, but that doesn't matter. It just matters that more people get to play great games. Now, the last thing I did want to note was about how there is going to be a bigger focus on AI. We feel good about how we will use AI on LinkedIn. In fact, LinkedIn is a consumer business. As you know, we even saw today, this week, they announced some new capabilities for both consumers and in their case, even recruiting. We think that AI, the same investments get monetized even through LinkedIn's innovation. Now, here's how it applies to gaming. And gaming, of course, is another place where you will see some of these things apply. And Windows, the place where I think I'm excited about is Copilot plus PCs. For us, it's not about having a disconnected edge. It's about having hybrid AI where the rebirth of the PC as the edge of AI is going to be one of those most exciting things for developers. Now, AI has been around for a long time. I think it's really concerning for people as people worry about losing their job to AI. Microsoft has said they are going to try and do it responsibly. We will see if they do that correctly and take them to task if they do not. But what a huge success for Microsoft. And the crazy thing was, literally 2 days ago or a week ago, whenever I made the last video, there's an article like, this is going to be like better for Sony than it is for Xbox. And it's just like, what are you talking about? Like, why is it phrased that way? Like, how can we get a dig in on Microsoft is how it felt reading that article. I'm like, this is so weird. This is such an odd take. And it was the first time where I'm just like, what? And you can go watch that video about that. But if you're curious how one of the last big successes did, it was Modern Warfare 2. And Modern Warfare 2 crossed 1 billion sell-through in 10 days. It was the fastest in franchise history. And now we're getting reports that from the official account, it's the number one total players, number one hours played, number one total matches. The question is how that ends up panning out in terms of revenue from Game Pass, how many people stay on, and I mean, just looking at my timeline, it's Brian Horton is no longer the creative director of Marvel's Wolverine from PlayStation Insomniac Studios. That was just posted by Stephen Totilo 5 hours ago. I talked about this Call of Duty success, and I'm being a little snarky with like, how is the internet going to figure out this is bad for Microsoft this time? Because that's what it's like on Twitter, right? And then Sony shut down Concord. I feel like we've just gone into upside down world where Sony is in this somewhat difficult place. Like, they're still selling hardware really well, but it seems like, you know, they just lost a really good director on the Wolverine game. They put the Ratchet and Clank team on Wolverine, which I hope is, I'm a huge, you might not know this about me, I am a massive Wolverine fan. When I started coding web pages, I coded the unofficial Wolverine homepage on GeoCities, and I would do little write-ups about every issue of Wolverine that came out. So I am probably more hyped than you are for that Wolverine game, unless you're as big of a fan as I am. But man, I'm stoked for that game. But Sony, you got to give us something to chew on in the meantime. Like, I don't know. Maybe you can let me know in the comments below what you're hyped for from Sony, but it has been a rough few months. There are games coming down the pipe from them, and the main point I wanted to make this whole video about is Microsoft really feels like they are starting to cook. It feels like they, and I just worry about getting excited, but I've played Stalker 2, and I think it's going to be a really good game. I've played Avowed, and I'm like, look, this might not be some sort of blockbuster hit, but I think this is a pretty damn fun game. So that's 2. Ryan played Indiana Jones, and a ton of people played Indiana Jones, and they're like, this is really good too. Metaphor ReFantazio is out. It's available on Xbox now. You can go play it. Everybody's talking about that game, and I'm like, it really just feels like 2025 and the end of 2024 it's just a lot of positive momentum, and I'm sort of excited about it. And I hope we get to the point where we got this positive momentum from Xbox. You know, Nintendo Switch comes out with their new hardware. We're going to be playing the new Legend of Zelda games that are looking better than ever. And then PlayStation comes out. They're like, all right, we rested for a year. Here's our slate for 2025, and it's banging, and everybody wins, right? Isn't that going to be an awesome, awesome year for gaming if that's what comes to transpire? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Hit that subscribe button, hit that bell. Sorry for the longer one. I don't usually do the 20 minutes, but this was quite a meaty earnings report. Hardware's still down. Let's be honest, hardware's a thing. It's not going to like magically bounce back and be 200% up. It's just not going to happen. So it's about content and services, and that's what it's going to be about into the future. It's just the world we got to live in. This member list is outdated, but thank you so much to any member who has ever supported this channel. I really, really do appreciate the heck out of you. And if you want to become a member, you can click that join button and support this channel right now. I'm going to see you for the next one. I might try and shoot another one tonight about some of those other stories I referenced. But in the meantime, check out Brad Sam's thing. Check out my other video about the article from GA.biz where they talked about how Call of Duty could wind up making Sony more money. I don't really agree with it, but check that out, and I'll see you for the next one. Bye for now, everybody.